Today I'm going to try to draw this set of stairs that climb up to reveal this tiny slice of Old Town in Tallinn, Estonia. Did I pick this reference just because it includes yet another tower? No, I didn't, and you can please keep your judgments to yourself. Thank you very much. In fact, I chose this because of the subframing, the texture, and the tower. Sue me. I like towers. Anyway, so today I'm starting the drawing with these walls that flank the scene. I really did choose this spot for the subframing primarily because I thought it would make for an interesting video first and foremost, which I've found tends to translate nicely to the drawings, whereas the inverse isn't always true. I can find an infinite number of things to draw, but most of them won't be photogenic. While I try my best to look for things with both the drawing and the video in mind, that's not always easy to manage in my head. There's already enough knocking around up there as it is. So I often fall back on looking for something photogenic and then asking whether or not it might make for a good drawing, and also a possible drawing, which is a whole different can of worms. So yeah, I really like the way this reference looks. It's probably something I would photograph, so I'm happy to have the opportunity today to draw it. As you can see, I'm approaching the stones of this wall on the left pretty straightforwardly. Since it's so close up, I didn't want to vaguely imply its texture like I normally would. Also, since the tower really isn't the primary subject here, I want to give each piece of the scene the requisite attention to keep the whole thing balanced. After a few minutes, I do realize that I'm spending what will be a disproportionate amount of time on this wall. So as I get closer to the edge of the frame, I'm adding fewer and fewer of these blocks. I think it's clear enough that the rest of the wall will go off to the left, in a similar fashion. And by keeping most of the detail near the center, it draws the eye inward, which is both visually pleasing and a pretty convenient excuse for me to move on to the rest of the drawing. As I draw in these blocks, I'm learning little by little what I should and shouldn't do. While I like to practice these as simple sketches before I sit down and draw the whole thing, I never get this deep into the process to notice anything of specific value. So it's usually during the filming of these videos that I learn the most. For example, going into this wall, I expected to include a lot more texture than I ultimately do. But as I went, I noticed that the sun flattened out most of it, especially compared to the opposite side, most notably in that intersection in shadow. I make sure to suggest some of the darker shadows between the blocks, but to avoid overdoing it, once I have the shapes in with a little bit of contrast, I just go ahead and move on. I can always come back if I feel like it doesn't fit the rest of the drawing, but, well, I don't. So I must have been happy with it. Other than a few quick marks to get a rough idea of where I might want that beautiful, beautiful tower to sit, and the tree next to it, I guess, I move right along to the opposite wall. I wasn't sure about the order of operations here, but by the end, I was glad I prioritized these two walls. In doing so, I built a frame within the frame, which would inform everything within that frame. So all that background stuff relied upon the scale of the foreground stuff. It wasn't until I knew how much space I had between these two walls that I could accurately judge how tall the tower would be or how broad I should make the tree or whatever else. Had I started the way you know that I love to, that is at the top of a tower, I easily could have misjudged how much room I had or didn't have, and that could have easily pushed the rest of the scene out of frame, which I obviously didn't want to do. So anyway, the wall on the right was a lot of fun. It looks like there's a little bit more texture for some reason than the left, and all of the shadow on the inside gave me free rein to go a little crazy. I'm on something of a high with regard to texture and shading said texture, so this area was just a good time. I try to keep in mind that these blocks in shadow are angled inward, toward the center of the frame, thanks to perspective. So I leave little breadcrumbs so I don't get lost on my way down. You'll notice that I skip over some sections and go right down to my eye line to remind myself where things level out. Also, I'm treating this texture with these scribbly marks, which is the professional term, and I honestly just don't know a better way. To maintain this rough texture, I figure that's the best way, and it has worked for me so far, so I'm sticking with it until I find something better. I don't know if what I'm doing here would be considered hatching, but what I consider to be hatching, like the parallel but sometimes perpendicular lines that people use for shading oftentimes, I don't think that would have worked for this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please always correct me if I'm wrong. But for a reasonably realistic rendition, alliteration, hello, I think this method that you're seeing here works better, he said, with very little confidence. Regardless, I think it's starting to look pretty good. And day by day, I'm feeling more and more comfortable with this, granted, very specific texture. And I'd venture to guess that this won't be the last time you'll be seeing it. I only have so many things to hold on to in this learning process, and this is one of them. So I hope you enjoy seeing it as much as I do. On the note of learning things as I'm making these drawings, remember a few minutes ago when I was talking about that, one such thing is with these stairs. Forgot is the wrong word because I don't think I've ever thought about it, but as these stairs get closer to me, they're also dipping deeper and deeper below my eye line, which means the top of each step is further revealed. I did not realize that as I was drawing them, and you can tell. There's a moment when I realize what's off about them, and I do try to fix it with a little bit more shading, but watching this video back with you, I can see just how clearly defined the top of the steps are from the sides. The top is so much lighter, noticeably lighter, and for whatever reason, I couldn't grasp that while I was sitting there. I've said it before, I'm a broken record, I know, but the difference between drawing from a photo and drawing from life is night and day. They are completely different experiences, and it's not until working through both that you can truly understand it. It shows you how strange eyesight is. Like everything is all around you and sort of visible, but peripheral vision feels like it makes up the overwhelming majority of what's being seen. It feels like true focus vision is really tight, like close up, and it takes shifting your gaze, refocusing on something else to get the full picture. I don't know if that's a pun, but if it is, Anyway, hopefully that makes sense. But if it doesn't, give it a try for yourself. Even if you're not into drawing, well, extra thanks for watching in that case. But even if you wouldn't call yourself an artist or whatever, and I don't know why I'm qualifying this so much, but pull up a photo of something ubiquitous like a tree. Try to draw the tree. Doesn't matter if it's good, but actually give it a try. Just do your best. When that's done, go outside and find a real tree. Try to draw that one. The words I'm using might not match up with your experience, which is fine, but you'll find that they're completely dissimilar, and going back and forth is disorienting. And hey, now you understand this series. Drawing from life is annoying, and in comparison, really difficult, but it's the thing I want to be able to do, so that's what I'm out here doing. Having tried it yourself, which I'm sure you paused the video to go do, now you see what I go through. Poor me. Please, pretty please subscribe to the channel. Okay. So back to the stairs real quick. I did something here that I regret, ? And again, it's something that's blatantly obvious in the video. On the right side of the steps, about where they meet the wall, there's a shadow that makes its way down, and it has these sharp angles on each step. In the moment, sitting in this tight corridor while a bunch of people ogle me as usual, all I see is the edge of that shadow, but not how wide it is or how it essentially goes all the way up the inside of that wall. Because of this, I make a pretty bold line that follows the stairs down, which would be fine if I made the wall close to as dark, but not quite as dark, which I do not. Instead, the final drawing has this bold line that unfortunately suggests that the stairs might be casting their own shadow onto the wall, like there's a space between the two. I actually found myself able to step back and examine this drawing for some reason, like while I was doing it, which gave me a few bursts of clarity as I drew, but this one, for whatever reason, flew under the radar apparently. It's not some big deal, but it's there forever now, and maybe I should just set it on fire. Very cool. So now we're off to the races. We finally made it to the whole point of this drawing, this stunning tower in the background. And of course, I am only joking. In fact, the tower and all the rest of the stuff in the background is just that. It's in the background. That means that it's not front and center. Duh. So there's some leeway with regard to detail, but also by drawing it with less detail on purpose, I'm bolstering the suggestion that it's further away. So you'll notice that I don't spend as much time on the tower or the surrounding elements as I did on the foreground. I don't know when or where or in what context I learned this, but it's a trick that seems omnipresent in art, and it goes hand in hand with a few other things like subtler contrast, less saturated colors, obviously perspective, etc. So the closer you get, the stronger those things will be. The further away, the weaker they'll be. Basically depth. There are a bunch of different ways to imply it, and I'm just barely testing the waters with this one angle, like keeping the details minimal, but I'm pretty excited to implement as many techniques as possible to get these drawings looking stellar. Finally, let's end on a kind of ironic turn of events. A weakness I feel I have, among very few others, is casually dealing with the perspective of buildings like this one in the background, and a strength that I thought I had was casually dealing with trees in the distance. This drawing is emblematic of not that. I actually draw that building in pretty nonchalantly. Of course, it's not perfect, but that's not the point. And that surprised me. I was concerned I'd mishandle the proportions to such a degree that everything back there would look irreparably off. But to my delight, for whatever reason, it came relatively easy to me. And it ends up looking just fine. However, on the other hand, I'm usually pretty confident with my distant renditions of trees, but today, thanks to this fully detailed approach I seem to have taken, I realized that what I'm usually doing is actually just heavily implying such trees, and this one required a lot more attention and precision than I'm used to. I was unprepared for that. I'm pretty sure the last tree I drew was just like a vague silhouette and some empty space, and I called it a day. But here I went into a lot more detail, or I tried to, and it wasn't as simple as I expected it to be. I'm not terribly concerned. I don't think it ruins the drawing by any means, but it's a present reminder of limitation and something I clearly haven't worked on as much as I thought. Anyway, definitely not a huge deal either way. The building is fine and the tree is fine, but just something I noticed. Spectacular, we've arrived. I've told you all the little things that I think, so I'll just say that on the whole, I'm pleasantly surprised. These textures are slowly improving, as well as the perspective, and I think this made for a just general solid test of my abilities. So, what are your thoughts? Do you think things are progressing? Are you having a good time listening to me ramble? Let me know in the comments, and if for some reason that I just can't fathom you've not yet subscribed to the channel, maybe let's go ahead and possibly take a second to do me the small favor of being gracious enough to do that right now while we're both sitting here. That'd be great. Anyway, I appreciate you nonetheless, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.